Hello, I want to go over the basics of Java strings. And so let's get at her. First, I want to just go over all the things you can do with strings, or all the things I will get you to do with strings. First thing you got to be able to do is make a string. Just like you've made ints or doubles or whatever in the past, start with the variable type. We want to make a string variable. We want to call it word. We're going to do equals, and then what we want it to start as. In this case, we want it to start as hi, and then a semicolon. So that's your basics. You can also do it this way, which is a more traditional way of creating objects versus primitives, but Java has the shortcut, so you can just do this. So you'll probably just end up doing this mostly. All right, that's making one. Other useful things you can do. You can stick two strings together with just by putting a plus sign in between them. So here we had pineapple and pen, and now word one doesn't equal pineapple anymore. Now it equals pineapple plus pen. So the two things stuck together. So plus sign kind of glues together the two things. I think that, yeah, like glue. So we're sticking the two things together and making it equal, word one equal to the result of that. Another thing we can do with a string is we can make an all lowercase version, or we can make an all uppercase version. So you just do the name of your string, str, whatever it happens to be, dot to lowercase. And then this is equal to a lowercase version. On its own, it does not change your string. If you want to actually change it, you've got to do something like this. Word equals the lowercase version of word. Again, uppercase, like if you just type this in, it would be equal to an uppercase version of word, this variable word. If you actually want to change what this variable is equal to, you got to do word equals word dot to uppercase. So notice, like, after this line, word would equal to A, B, C, D, E, all lowercase, and after it would be equal to A, B, C, D, E, all uppercase. So that's another thing we can do. Another thing we can do is we can check to see if two strings are equal. So two equal signs works great for any primitive, double, char, int, anything like an int, anything like a double, Boolean, chars, if I may have already said that. Anyway, those are what equals is good for. If you want to check that two objects like strings are, if they're equal, use dot equals. It's a method. So something like this. Say I've got a strings A, B, and C, and I want to check if they're equal to each other. So I could do C dot equals A. That's kind of like C equals A. This is the equivalent, except dot equals is a method. So instead of C equals A, you've got C dot equals, and then in the brackets where you put the information it needs to do its job, you've got the other thing you're comparing C to. Notice these are entirely equivalent, A dot equals C or C dot equals A, and all that business. So instead of using equals, you just got to do dot, the name of the word, and then what you're comparing it to in brackets. So that's going to come up a lot. There's also dot equals ignore case. So if you had this and you typed in, say, str dot equals ignore case, this is often very useful if you're trying not to be case sensitive. So something like that would work great. You've got your calling string, whatever it happens to be called, dot equals, ignore case, and then it would match no matter what the capitalization was. If both of them were really weird, or if they're all the same, or whatever. So that's a good little trick. So dot equals comes up a lot. Another thing that comes up almost every freaking question is dot substring. Anytime you want part of a word, you need to use dot substring to get part of that word. So in this case, if I have a string variable equal to the word supervision, and I want to get the first 5 characters of that, this is how I do that. Word.substring is equal to super. Now, if you're giving it 2 indexes like we did here, separated by commas, it'll go from the first index you give it to just before the second index. So this is the first thing you want, and then this is the first thing you don't want. So anytime you're giving it 2 numbers or 2 things that are equal to numbers, give it the first thing you want and the first thing you don't want. So in this case, first thing we want is S at index 0. First thing we don't want is V at index 5. So that'll grab from the first index you give it to right before the second index you give it. Notice that index doesn't even need to exist. So we could do substring. If we wanted vision from supervision, we would give it the first index we want, 5. And then we could give it the first index we don't want. And we want everything up to 10. So the first index we don't want is 11, which we can give it, even though 11 doesn't exist. And usually that's a bad thing, but that's the first thing you don't want. So this would work just fine. However, if you do .substring and just give it 1 number instead of 2 numbers, by default, it goes from that index to the end. So anytime you're going from some point to the end of the string, last 2 letters, last 7 letters, whatever, just give it 1 number. Why work harder than you need to? So yeah, if you just give it 5, it'll go from that to the end and be equal to vision. So this is super important, and it often gets, like let's say I wanted to find that the first 2 letters are equal to, why don't we do first 5 letters? Say first 5 letters are equal to super. We do the name of our string, .substring 05 to get the first 5 letters, and then this is equal to a string, so we can do dot from that and then do dot equals. So we could just have this whole thing, and then after it dot equals, and then in the brackets super. And that would be how I'd check that the first 5 letters of a word is equal to super. So that's going to come up a lot. Know how to use substring, know how to use equals, know how to use them together. If you just want to grab a character from a string, I love using char@. Char@ is great. You just give it an index and it's equal to the char at that index. So if I do word.char@0, with this, my word being supervision, the S is at index 0, U would be 1, P would be 2, E would be 3, and R would be 4. So the char at index 4 is R. Tricks with this, these are no longer equal to strings, so they can't use string methods. So if you do .char@, you can't do lowercase after, but you sure could before. So you got to make sure you've got no string methods after the char@, because everything gets executed left to right. But chars can't use string methods. So after char@, you're out of methods. But chars, remember, use equals equals, not dot equals. So you would use kind of this thing to check for equality, equals equals. You would not use dot equals after char@. Also remember, chars, you don't put them in double quotes, you put them in single quotes, so you will need single quotes around anything you're trying to check it's equal to. So yeah, just a couple things to keep in mind with char@. Be a little careful. Now, figuring out the length of a string is surprisingly important. And it's pretty simple. You just do whatever your string is called, dot length, bracket, bracket. Never anything inside these brackets. Like, this is a method, but a string always knows its length. It doesn't need any extra information, so there will never, ever, ever be anything inside these brackets. So don't try to put anything in those brackets. Dot length just gives you the length of whatever string is calling it. This is very, very useful for finding indexes for use with substring or charat. Say you wanted the second last index, it would just be dot length minus 2. Or the third last index would be the name of the string dot length minus 3. If you wanted the middle index, it's word dot length divided by 2. Now keep in mind, a lot of times you're not just giving the length, you are then using it as one of these indexes. So instead of 5 maybe, let's say you wanted the first half of the word, it might be 0 comma word dot length divided by 2, because that would be equal to kind of the middle index. So if you wanted the first half of the word, first index you want is 0. First index you don't want is the middle index, which would be the length divided by 2. And it's good doing things in terms of length because a lot of times things will be part of functions, and so the user will be maybe typing something in rather than them being a set string. So you need it to be able to react no matter how long it is. All right, so dot length is very, very useful for finding the right index for use with substring. So you will do it all the time and it will look terrible, but as long as you think of this as a number like 11 or 15 or whatever it happens to be, and you're just doing math with a number, it looks terrible, but it's really just equal to a number, and you can do any number stuff with it. You can subtract stuff from it. You can divide by it. You could multiply if you wanted, but usually you won't. It's usually subtract or divide. Oh yeah, just equal to a number there. The other time this comes up is guards. A lot of times when you're making code, you want it to deal with any situation. Say you want the last 2 letters of a word, but that word can be as short as 1 character or 0. You're going to need a little if statement or a part of your condition that will protect you from trying to grab characters that aren't there. So you could have a little if statement that won't return the last 2 characters if there aren't 2 last characters to give. And so this is really useful for that. Dot length is useful for conditions to protect you from grabbing characters that aren't there, and for use with substring to get like the last so many characters of a string, or the first half or the last half. Now, something I've talked about a little bit is this method chaining thing. You can just keep going. As long as it's still a string, it can use string methods. Word 1 is a string. Word 1 dot 2 lowercase is equal to a string. It's equal to the lowercase version of string. So any string can use a string method, like say substring. In this case, word 1 dot 2 lowercase is equal to the lowercase version of string. Dot substring 5 comma 11, or just 5, is equal to vision, all lowercase. These 2 could be in any order. Like you could substring it first and then do 2 lowercase, or as it is now, lowercase first, then do substring, because both of these are equal to a string. Dot substring is equal to a string, a shorter string, and dot 2 lowercase is equal to a string. But in this case, dot equals is equal to a Boolean, true or false. And dot true false can't do dot 2 lowercase, or it can't be equal to a smaller version of a word. So equals must come last. Because word 1 is a string, word 1 dot 2 lowercase is a string, word 1 dot 2 lowercase dot substring 5 comma 11 is a string, but word 1 dot 2 lowercase dot substring 5 comma 11 dot equals word 2 is not a string. It's a Boolean, and Booleans can't do string things. Another useful one that comes up is index of. So use this if you've got kind of a longer string and you're looking for a shorter string inside that string. So it'll be equal to the position of the first time it finds the smaller string in the bigger string, like it's just equal to the index of the first letter of the smaller string in the bigger string, unless it's not there. If the smaller string is never in the bigger string, it's equal to -1. So we did this. and printed out index, that would equal 7, because the H would be 0, E would be 1, L would be 2, other L would be 3, O would be 4, comma would be 5, space would be 6, and so the index of the first letter of the smaller word we're looking for in the bigger word or the bigger string is 7. Last index of is exactly the same thing, but then it looks kind of like back to front. So it'll find the last index that it occurs. If it only occurs once, they're equal to the same thing. All right, so I'm going to do a bunch of examples here, and hopefully this is helpful. So you've got, we want to create a string, so we just do the name of the type of variable we're trying to create. We're supposed to call it result, and we're going to make it equal to an empty string. So just like we're making any other variable type, whatever the heck we want to call it, equals, and then whatever the heck we want to make it equal to, semicolon. So you should have that down. This one basically exactly the same. We do the name of the type of variable we're trying to make, what we want to call it, an equal sign, and then what we want it to equal at first. Oh, I forgot the end quotes. There we are. Got to be pretty precise. And then we can do the same thing. So we want to make a string. So variable type. We want it to be called word. We do an equal sign, and then it starts out as rad. We can change it later if we want. All right. So this is very similar to what we were talking about at the beginning with concatenation. So the pineapple plus pen equals pineapple pen. So this is equal to pineapple pen. It's equal to the first string glued together with the second string with a little plus sign. And then we just want to make word 1 equal to that. So we're going to do pretty much exactly the same thing, except we're going to do str. We're trying to mess with str. We want to make it equal to super. Now keep in mind we're going to need a space here because spaces need to be part of it. So I did put that space there. And then our glue to stick stuff together for concatenation is the plus symbol. And then I'm just going to write str because that's equal to awesome according to this above code. Now, we want to make word 1 equal word 2 equal awesome sauce by adding word 2 to the end using the plus equals operator. Remember, plus equals basically does this, except it'll add the thing to the end. So plus equals, like in this case, is saying make word 1 equal what it was before plus word 2. But in this way, this will always add the thing on the right to the end of the word on the left, the string on the left. So this kind of plus equals thing will always stick whatever this thing is on the right side of the equation to the end, to the right of the string on the left, right here. Stick it to the end. All right, so we're trying to use concatenation again. We want to make a new string called sentence. To make a new string, we just write the type of variable we're trying to make, and then whatever we're trying to call it, and then an equal sign, and then in this case, we want it to equal awesome, awesome, awesome using this variable and concatenation. So, well, this is one awesome, and then if I want to glue it to something else, I use a plus symbol. And so I'll glue in another awesome, and then I'll glue in yet another awesome. So variable type, whatever we want to call it, equals, and then we want it to be equal awesome, 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 and str is one awesome. So str plus str plus str. All right, now this is just basically teaching you how to use .to lowercase. you might think it's like this. You might be like, okay, str.to lower case. You'd be like, okay, my job is done. I've converted str to lowercase, but then you get it wrong. The problem is this is equal to a string. It's equal to a lowercase version of string, but we haven't actually changed str yet. We haven't changed it. So if we want to do that, if we want to make it equal to its lowercase version, we got to do the name of the variable equals the lowercase version, and then it'll work. All right, now we want to test our to uppercase thing, so very much the same. So we want to make a new string variable. So the type of variable we're trying to make, what we want to call it, and then equals, like always. And then we're going to use this whoa variable. So we'll start with whoa, and we want to convert it to uppercase. So we are making yay equal to the whoa string all forced to uppercase. Next guy. We've got a scanner called input. So for this one, you're going to have to use .next to grab the next word the user types in. So, I mean, we should start by actually making our variable. We're making a new string variable called lower string. So name of the variable, what we want to call it, equals, and then we want it to equal the next word the user types in. Input is the name of our scanner. Scanners can use the .next command or .next method, which grabs the next thing from the user. And then we want to convert this string, which we just grabbed from the user, converted to lowercase. So this is equal to the next word the user types in. And then if we just do .to lowercase, that's equal to the lowercase version of that word. And then we're just saving the lowercase version of the next thing the user types in to our lower str variable, which we just made. Next guy. In this case, we've already grabbed the next thing the user typed in and saved it in string str. And we want to replace this bit of code right here, the ... And we want to check if the next thing the user typed in, what str is equal to Lila. So we're going to have to use the .equals method, because remember, strings are objects, not primitives. So we got to use .equals instead of equals equals. So not too bad. We start in with the variable name. And then if we want to check that it equals something, we just do .equals. And then what we want to check it's equal to. And that's all we need. It's kind of the equivalent of str equals Lila in quotes. We need the quotes because Lila is not a variable name, it's the actual string. So throw the quotes around it. Instead, we're just using our equals method to check if two things are equal, str and Lila. Nice guy. Here we've created a scanner, got the user to type something in, saved what they typed in as the variable word, and we want to check if its word is equal to puppy. Can you tell I made this when I got my new dog? Anyway, so she's a bit more than a puppy at this point. So we'll start with the name of our variable we're trying to check it's equal to. Now we're not going to use equals equals, we're going to use .equals because it is an object, not a primitive. And we want to check that it equals puppy. That's it. This is just how you check word is equal to puppy. All right, now we've got another variable called word that is equal to the next thing the user typed, and we're trying to replace the ... of the if statement, the condition of it. Now we want to check if basically exactly this guy, I could copy and paste it because it's basically the same. The only thing I need to change is make that lowercase. Now there's two ways I can solve this. I can either convert word to lowercase. So I could do word.to lowercase dot equals puppy all in lowercase version. So we take the word the user typed in, come up with a lowercase version of it, and then check if that lowercase version equals puppy, which works great. Another thing we could do if we don't care about case is probably just do equals ignore case. And that might be more fun. Because, yeah, less screwing around. So that'll just check the two things are equal, but it doesn't care about case. All right. Now we've got two variables. We've got str, which is equal to the next thing the user types in, and a variable called target. And target is this delightful fellow, which we probably don't want to retype. And we just want to make sure that we want to replace this and do a condition that checks if str is equal to the target ignoring case. So we're going to take str. We could do the to lowercase version of it and then check that that equals target. Now it's possible you're asking yourself, why isn't target in quotes? And that's because target is a variable. So the quotes are there to differentiate between variables and strings. So they tell you that it's a string, not a variable. In this case, we got a variable, so we don't need the quotes. Now this will work, but we could also do the equals ignore case again, which might be a great idea. So str.equals ignore case target. All right, this might be a good one. We've got the scanner and then something that tells the user to enter their password, and we basically want to check to see if their password is right. So we're just checking that the next word the user types in is equal to Lila. So first we got to get the next word the user types in. So we're going to start with our scanner. The name of our scanner is input. And then we're going to do dot next, because that's equal to the next word they type in. Now we need to check that that is equal to, equals, why don't we do ignore case? So we want to check that it's equal to Lila ignoring case. So we take the next thing the user typed in, input.next, and then we check that if it equals ignoring case, Lila. And then if we do that, we're all good. Again, we could use, if we felt like it, we could do to lowercase dot equals. And that would work as well. Dot next, dot to lowercase, dot equals Lila. So that's another option if you feel like it. Now we get into substring. So we're going to make str change from what it was before. So we'll do str equals. And we just want it to equal the first three characters of itself. So we're going to use substring, which we'll do anytime we want just a piece of a string. First index we want is 0, comma. This is index 0. This is index 1. This is index 2. So we want 0, 1, and 2. First index we don't want is 3. And that's it. We're making string equal to this thing, which is equal to the first three characters of str, stir. The characters starting at 0, and first one character we don't want is the one at index 3. All right, now we got to grab the last couple characters. So we're just going to start with str, And we're not using dot length for this one. We will a lot in the future, but we're just going to count. So we don't want W, which is at 0, O, which is at 1, N, which is at 2, D, which is at 3, E, which is at 4, R, which is at 5, F, which is at 6. We do want the thing starting at index 7, though. The U is at 7. So I'm going to do str.substring 7. Now this is equal to, remember, if you just give it one number, it'll go from that index to the end. So I just gave it 7. This won't change string. Right now it's just equal to ul. So we got to make str equal that now. Throw a little semicolon at the end. All right, now we want to do the same thing involving dir. Remember, it's always first index you want, first index you don't want. So we're going to do str.substring first index we want. It's not 0, it's not 1, it's not 2, it's index 3. Index 3 is the first index we want. And then first index we don't want, we're at 3, 4, 5. First index we don't want is 6. Which makes sense. It's 3 letters, and that's 3 more letters. And we want to change what string's equal to. So this is just equal to what we want it str to start equaling, but it hasn't actually changed str. So we're going to do str equals dir. So that'll actually change it. All right, we got this variable word, which is equal to the next thing the user typed in. And we want to check to see if the first 3 letters of the word is equal to rad. So we start with word, and we want to get the first 3 letters of it. So we're just going to do dot substring, because that's how you get part of a string. First index we will want is 0. So we will want the things at index 0, 1, and 2. So first index we don't want would be index 3. So that's equal to what the first 3 letters of word. Now we want to check that's equal to rad. So now that we've got the first 3 letters, we got to use dot equals. And then check that it's equal to rad. That's it. So we start with this variable that's equal to the next word the user typed in. We get the first 3 letters from it. First index we want, first index we don't want. And then use dot equals to compare to objects like strings and see if it's equal. All right, next guy. We're going to create an int called len that's equal to the length of the string. So we know how to make an int. Variable type, what we want to call our variable, equals, so just like all the strings we've been making. And then to get this, we'll take our string variable, str, and just do dot length, and that's equal to the length of the word. If it's made up of 12 characters, the length would be 12. Oh, don't forget your semicolons. There you go. So that's all good. All right, next bit. I create an int called third last that's equal to the index of the third last character of the string. So this is going to be pretty useful just for getting the right index for substring. So we want to make an int, so variable type we want, what we want to call it. In this case, we want to call our variable third last, and then an equal sign. And then if we're going to find the index, that's the third last character of the string, we should probably start at the string's length, because it could be any length. It could be 5,000, it could be 5. But like if you think of like a 5-letter word, it'll have indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if it's a 5-letter word, it'll have indexes from 0 to 4. If it's a 1,000-letter word, it'll have indexes from 0 to 999. So it's the last index is always 1 less than the length. The second last index, in fact, is always 2 less than the length. What would the third last index be? Maybe 3 less than the length. So we'll just do the string's length because this is just a number. It looks fancy, but it's just a number. So it's a 5-letter word. It's equal to 5. And the second or the third last index would be 5 minus 3, or 2. 0, 1, 2. All right, next guy. We got a variable called stir, which is equal to the next thing, the next word the user types in. I'm going to create an int called last that's equal to the index of the last character of stir. So variable type, what we want to call it, equals, as always. And then whatever the last index is depends a lot on how long the word is. So we're going to have to do the word's length. And then, like, let's say it's a 5-letter word. The last, if its indexes go from 0 to 4, so the last index will always be the length minus 1. The second last index will always be the length minus 2. The 53rd last index will be the length minus 53. So just really hammer that in, think it through. That all comes from the starting at index 0. But yeah, works great. All right, we're getting a little funnier here. We want to make an int called middle. So this is one way to get the middle index of a string. Again, variable type we want to make, what we want to call it, and then an equal sign. And then this also depends on the length. If you think about it, if you got a 1,000 length string, the middle index would be about 500. If you got a 10 length string, the middle index is about 5. So why don't we do it that way? We'll just say, hey, the middle is always the length divided by 2. So if you divide it by 2, you always get the halfway. So yeah. So just the length divided by 2 if you need the middle index, which will be very useful if you want to look at the first half of a string or the last half. You need that middle index. All right, so now we're getting a little fancier. What if we wanted the middle index but 1 to the left of that? Or I guess for you, left would be that way. So we do, again, our variable type that we want to make, what we want to call it, and then an equal sign. It's going to depend on the length. It's going to be actually depend on the length divided by 2. As we said in the last one, that the length divided by 2 is the middle index. If we want to go 1 to the left of that, we just got to subtract 1. If we want to go 1 to the right of that, we'd add 1. If we want to go left 2, we'd subtract 2. Think that one through until it makes sense. All right, now we're going to actually use it. This is the most common thing to do, like grabbing part of a string. And a lot of times it involves using the length. So this could be a little tricky. So again, the start's not bad. We're creating a string variable. So variable type, what we want to call it, equals. Now we want to get the last 2 characters. So anytime we want part of a string, that is the name of the string dot substring. But if we want the last 2 characters, we need the index of the second last character, and it could be any length because it's coming from the user. But it will always be relative to the length. Just like we did before, we can just take the length. If we want the index of the second last character, that would be minus 2. And that would be equal to, this is equal to the second last index, no matter how long the string is. And if you just give substring 1 number, like we are right now, it'll go from that index to the end. So this whole thing is equal to the last 2 letters of whatever the user types in. And we're setting that to last 2. So stuff like this, using substring with length and subtraction and stuff is very important, but it looks kind of funny until you get very used to it. All right, pretty much exactly the same, only we want the last 4 characters. So again, variable type we want to make, what the heck we want to call our variable, and then an equal sign. And now we need to get the last 4 characters of str using substring, because anytime we want to get part of a string, we use substring. Last 4 characters is certainly part of a string. So if we just had that 4th last index and gave it here, it would go from there to the end. But unfortunately, that 4th last index is relative to the length. So we got to get the length first, and then the 4th last index would be the length minus 4. That is how she is done. So we're just doing string.substring, and then the length minus 4 is the index of the 4th last character. And if you just give substring one number, it'll go from that index to the end. So then it's equal to the last 4 characters. All right, we got another string of unknown length because the user typed it in. We want the first half of the string. So we're going to create a new string. So variable type we want to make, whatever the heck we want to call it, equals, and then we need to get the first half of the string. So that is part of a string, so we're going to do substring. What's the first index we want if we want the first half of the string? Well, the first letter is in the first half, so first index I want is 0, the index of the first letter. First index I don't want, if I'm talking first half, I'm probably talking the middle index. So that depends on the length, so I'll do string.length divided by 2. That is the index of the middle, as we saw above, right here, length divided by 2. It's going off there. So we're just doing that exact thing, but combining it with substring. So first half is equal to substring, starting at index 0 and going to the middle index. And then we want to replace this if statement with a condition that checks if the last 2 letters of str equal to So we've got the thing the user typed in, str, and we want to check that the last 2 letters are equal to so we're going to get the last 2 letters. So we're going to have to use substring because we're getting part of a string. To do that, we'd need the index of the second last character, which is the string's length minus 2 to get the index of the second last character. And then once we've got the last 2 characters, whatever they are, we can check that they're equal using dot equals er. So we're just combining the tricks we found for using substring and combining it with the length of the string to grab the last 2 characters. And then once we've got the last 2 characters, we're just checking that those last 2 characters equal er. No semicolons because we're just replacing the dot 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 for the condition. All right. So now we want to replace the dot 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 again. We've got str, which is an unknown length because it's whatever the user typed in. And we want to check if the first half of the string equals Lila. So we got this. We got our user entered string. We want to get part of it, the first half, in fact. If we want the first half, first index we want is 0. First index we don't want is probably that middle number. So that would be the string's length divided by 2. Now this whole thing is equal to the first half of the string. And we just got to check that that equals, using dot equals, Lila. And then we got it. All right. 3 more. So we want to check if the last 2 letters of string equals ignoring case, but we have to use .2 lowercase, I think, unless I coded it differently. So we will start with str, which is the thing the user typed in. We want the last 2 letters, so that's part of a string, so we're using substring. If we want the last 2 letters, if we just give it the second last index, it'll go from that to the end. Second last index is the length of the string minus 2. So that's the index of the second last. This bit right here is the index of the second last letter. We just give it that number. Substring will go from that to the end. And now we got to check that. Oh, now we got to convert it to lowercase. To lowercase. And now we got to check that that equals That's it. So we wanted part of a string, specifically the last 2 letters. So we gave substring the index of the second last letter. We were supposed to convert it to lowercase before we use .equals. So we're not checking for case. And then we do .equals, the thing we're trying to check that it equals. Next guy. We've got a user entered string called str. We're replacing an if statement condition. And we want to check if the character at index 3 is equal to s using char at. So this will be a bit different. We haven't done char at yet. We talked about it, but haven't used it. So we're just going to check that the user entered string if the char at index 3 is equal to, notice I'm using equals equals, not dot equals, because chars are primitives. And also notice I'm using the single quotes, just like I got right here, because that's how you tell if something is a char. Single quotes are different than double quotes to differentiate chars from strings. And then another thing, we're just replacing the if statement condition. We've got a user-defined string, and we're just trying to check if the first character is equal to a W, but we do need to ignore case using .2 lowercase. Now, if you were to do this in the order suggested, that might get a little confusing. If you were to do str.char at 0 to grab the first character, and then .2 lowercase, that won't work because str is a string and can use a string method, but after .charat, moving left to right, it's now a char, and chars don't have a 2 lowercase method. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do the 2 lowercase first and the charat after it, because after 2 lowercase, it's equal to a string. Strings can use the charat method. And then if I want to check a char is equal to something else, I just do equals equals, because it's primitive, and a W in single quotes to show that it is a char. Last one. Oh, that was the last one. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. I know it's a long haul, but hopefully you're better off for it. Happy comp sciing.